Mr. McFarlane. So I was looking through some of your models, have some suggestions for you. Some things will make it a little bit easier to model. So yeah, I was also looking to make sure that the models are built correctly and with symmetry and all that stuff that we desire when we're modeling in SolidWorks. So the terminal top, that looks like it's in pretty good shape, pretty simple model. Everything's well defined. You have a circle with a midplane extrusion. Circles are fairly easy to to put together. They probably have the least amount of sketch relations out there. This is kind of weird. This happens every now and then if your computer is running out of resources like memory, and I have a lot of stuff open, so it kind of degrades this dimension here. Not to worry if that happens to you, but it just takes a portion of the code that's behind that dimension and actually shows it instead of showing what the code is actually supposed to be doing. So minor issue, and that could be resolved once you get, once you reopen SolidWorks and reopen these files. That thing should disappear. So that's in pretty good shape. I'm not going to go ahead and say I'm not going to save that. This element here, this is okay. It looks like everything's pretty well defined. Let's go ahead and look at your base sketch. That's in really good shape. I like the way that lays out. You have one set of dimensions over here which kind of drive the design. And this is a driven dimension just because it happens to be on that line, which is already a diagonal there and already defined. So that works out. And then you just mirror it over to the other side. So you have symmetric relationships all over the place. So that's really good. I like the way that lays out. It's exactly the way you should do it. And then the other ones, the boss extrude. One thing I would suggest with this, not using the 3D sketch for this, because 3D sketches are really hard to define, especially in an application like this. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and roll this back a bit, and actually enter some, put in some reference geometry in here, which I think will probably work out a little bit better. So this is what I would do. Go to reference geometry. Let's go to plane. What we're going to do is we're going to choose a couple different resources in here. And the plane works just like the planes that we are originally starting with in SolidWorks, but it actually provides us with an extra, some extra surfaces that may not be apparent that we'd actually use for things just like what we're going to be doing with the whole wizard. So our first reference is going to be the front plane. And what we also want with that reference, as a second reference, we want to have perhaps that cylindrical edge, that face. And what we want to do is we want to make this parallel. So now you can see the plane that's already in there, where it's being generated. And it's called plane 1 by default because it's the first plane we've actually created, but it's also parallel to the front plane, so why don't we just call that front plane 1. So if you have a really complicated model, having these things labeled like this is really helpful. And then let's go to Whole Wizard. Whole Wizard, and I believe we're just going to select the parameters that we already have in there. And then positions, we're not going to do 3D sketch, but we're going to click on that plane in order to put it in there. Then we're going to get something that's pretty close over there and pretty close over here. And while we're here, I'm going to click my normal button and actually put these holes in a little bit closer shape over here. Actually, it shows a different surface than what we really want. So what we want to do is click on that plane for our positions. Let's see if we can get that to work right. Not quite what we want. So let's get out of that and try that again. Let's actually select that plane first, and then go in the Whole Wizard. And again, we're going to use all the default characteristics that we have in there. And click on that plane. There we go. And then we'll click on this plane over here, and roughly in that same area. So let's go back to normal too, and see what that looks like. Let's put in some geometry in here so we can get this defined. So we're going to go from the top to the bottom. We're going to make sure that that point is on that line and make that coincident. And then perhaps a dimension from the bottom if you want to do that. Maybe 0.125. I'm not certain where the other one was. And we could do the same thing over here too. We can go ahead and put in the center line down here. Another option is to put is to mirror that to the other side by putting a center line right down the middle of your part. Because your part is symmetrical, we can do that. So let's go ahead and do that just by demonstration. Just for demonstration. So let's put a center line right down the middle here. And let's take this already defined point over here with that line, that center line. We could do a mirror entities on the other side. and we can go to the green check mark. One thing about that dimension we just put in there, we right click in sketch 9, and the top sketch is the one that derives the location of our hole wizard. If you see that 0.13, but it's really 0.125, what we can do is we can increase the precision on that so we can actually see that dimension a little bit better. And that'll probably import it into our drawing too a little bit better. So now we have those holes in a very predictable location. These holes which were based on the 3D sketch, let's go ahead and delete that. And that gets rid of that error there too, and then our boss extrude after that. When we're done with this sketch down here, if we right click in that sketch, we can tell it to hide, and that kind of gets it out of there. So that's how I would do that. I think you'll find it to be a little bit easier. So I'm not going to save that. I'm going to let you do that. This one we can do a little bit better job in this. You have a lot of sketches in here, and I think I went over this a little bit last week with you on it. And let me show you just a better way of doing it. I'm going to pick up these dimensions, maybe the 2-inch dimension up here. And a lot of these are still underdefined. So this is a lot of stuff going on here, and you put a lot of work into it. But let me show you an easier way of doing this. Let's just go ahead and erase all of this. And we'll just start from scratch. We'll start with a reference geometry. We'll put a center line from the top to the bottom. And from the left to the right, what we're going to be doing with this reference geometry with these center lines. So you're going to be using these for mirroring from the left to the right to the top to the bottom. So we're going to put in a couple center lines in here too, and these center lines are going to be where we're going to be putting our points, which are going to drive the sketch. So maybe a 1/2 inch. I'm not certain what your desire is on this. This is your model. But we're going to make them a 1/2 inch each, and then we're going to start dropping in some points. So let's do this side. Here we'll put in 4 points, and that's pretty much all the points we need to do. After we do this, we could just mirror them from left to the right and then from the top to the bottom. So let's go from that point to that edge, and maybe 3 inches initially, and perhaps from this one to that one. I could make that 3 inches or 2 inches, whatever your desire is. This is your model, but this is a way to actually make them fully defined and easy to edit with a lot less reference geometry that you had. So now we have these points are fully defined because the line that they're on are fully defined, and they're defined from the center line over here, so everything's black and ready to go. Before we leave this, let's go ahead and select these points. Let's go to mirror. Let's see, there it is, mirrored up there, and then we're going to mirror it about that. And right click, a little green check mark that, and then we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to click all those points we put in there, and we're going to mirror that, mirror about that line down here, and it puts them on the bottom. So if we rebuild this, that should be in pretty good shape. But let's go ahead and do the other ones here too. In fact, let's go to Control Z and just back up one step. And let's do this. Instead of putting out the center line on the left side like I did, let's put it on the right side. So we could actually mirror this in a couple different ways. So we're going to do the two at the same time. So 0.5 for that, and put in our points down here. So probably 3 points on this side. This one and that, we'll probably want to keep our 2-inch dimension. So remember, when we go from that point to that center line, if we go over the center line, it gives us a diameter dimension. If we go on the inside of that, it gives us a radius dimension. So we're going to make that 2 also. And this one, I think we make that 2. It's going to put that right on that line. So it may not be exactly what we're looking for there. So maybe we can make each of these 1.5 inches. Yeah, whatever you like, but the desire here is to make it symmetrical. So like we did before, now we can select all these points in here, and then we can mirror them. So mirror entities, let's click on this for the mirror about, puts it on that side, and the green check mark, and we can take everything that's on top, and being careful not to select our center lines because we don't want to double those. Just click on all the points, go to mirror entities, and mirror about this. Now it puts them all on the bottom. If we go to rebuild, now we have our poles all in predictable locations and pretty much where we want them. It's up to you whether you want to put a hole over here in the corner. This is your model. I'm just showing you how to do it, and different ways that you can do it. And this way is definitely a lot easier than putting in all that reference geometry that you put in and have it in dimension every hole. You'd have to dimension only about 1/4 of the holes you need to on the whole thing, and it just mirror them across. So enough said there. I'm not going to save that. I think our box is in pretty good shape. I like the way the symmetry of the holes are down here. Let's go ahead and look at your base feature. That's good. I like the way that lays out exactly where it should be. The origin's right in the middle, which means that when you put your model together, you can reference all your planes that are in the middle of your base feature here, as well as in the middle of your assembly when you put it together. You have your shell, your cut extrude here. You have a minus sign down here, which means it isn't fully defined, so we probably want to define that a little bit better. One way to do that is to right click and go to fully defined sketch and just stick with all the default settings in this. If you just go to the green check mark, it throws in some dimensions on that. Well, let's take these dimensions, since it's over here in this corner, and let's just move them over. If you click in a dimension and go to that blue selection square and just move that, puts it in a different spot. So 3.5 for the bottom over here, which is pretty close to the dimension that's there, and it may be 4.375, and increase the precision on that too if you want to do that. And that kind of puts that box in the right location. Let's go ahead and rebuild that. And your sketch 9, let's go ahead and take a look at that. I like the symmetry in there. They're all defined the same, but just like we did before in regard to your hole wizard, we can delete a lot of this stuff instead of having to dimension all this stuff too. Is to just just do a quarter of what you need to do and just mirror it over to either side 2 times, and then you got it in place. One other advantage of doing that is when you're putting together a drawing, you don't want all those dimensions in there. You just want to have enough dimensions that will help define the part that you want to build. So let's do this. Let's put in some reference geometry in here, just like we did before. A couple center lines, left to right, top to bottom. Let's take that hole and mirror that to this side. And let's take these 2 holes, not holes necessarily, they're actually points, and we'll mirror that to the bottom. And if we go to rebuild, it's still the exact same thing that you had, it just takes a lot less dimensions to do it. Fully defined, we're in pretty good shape there. So this is actually a pretty darn good start to your assembly. So let's do this. Let's start a new assembly. I'm going to go ahead and open up my template file, and we'll open up my assembly template file. And with this menu, you're using inches. Let's go ahead and insert a component so you know how to do that. Your box shell is already open, so let's go ahead and do that. Now, when you have this, you have it moving around in our assembly over here. But if you want to get that matched up to the origin, you have to do the green check mark here, or go to View, turn on your origins, and just snap onto the origin that's there. So the origins and the origins actually snap up together. So let's go to the front and see what that looks like. That's not really the front, that looks like the back to me, so you might want to consider a different orientation for this box. Spacebar, front. You might consider reorganizing that so that it actually goes into your assembly correctly. One thing you could do with your assembly here is actually turn that around so the front of the assembly represents the back of the part. But remember that when you're putting your models together, to try to keep the front, the orientations correct. So I think it's probably the shell. If you turn your shell and put it on the back part, that could do it. So instead of that face, let's click on this face. It'll probably make some other things go into error. With the shell, we actually clicked on 2 faces. Let's unselect that face. I cut extrude. We're going to go ahead and, okay, well that looks like it worked out okay. That went into error. So let's go ahead and click on the plane for that. Instead of that plane here, let's go ahead and click on this plane and see if that fixes that. Which it does. Everything's in pretty good shape. So let's go ahead and go to our new assembly. Spacebar, let's go to front of that. It looks like it's in pretty good shape, and you can probably model everything after that. So, that's about all I have to say about your models. They look good. It's a really good start. So good luck with that. If you have any additional questions, let me know.